All right, well, welcome everybody. Good morning. So today, this is our Marblehead Memories monthly meeting. So usually it's the first Saturday of every month, but because of Labor Day, we pushed it off a week so that we would try to get more people here. Every first Saturday of every month, 10 a.m., we come up with a theme. And the last time we all met, we were trying to figure out what the theme for this month would be because there was something else that was going to be happening. And we thought about perhaps the Great Race. And everybody seemed pretty excited by that. So now, as definitely not a native Marbleheader myself, so I had to look into this a little bit to figure out what exactly is the Great Race. So I'm excited to hear your memories, your stories. Somebody this morning shared an image with us, which I can bring up at some point, and we can share the image. You all should have share capacity. So if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, it should say share screen and you can share an image, or you can email it to us during the meeting, info@marbleheadmuseum.org, and we'd be happy to share it for you. According to that Sports Illustrated article from 1975 that I shared in the chat, this article is quite interesting. According to this article, that in the winter of 1967, it says, in Maddie's sail loft, a group of Marbleheaders were entertaining friends from Watertown, and one of them said something to the effect of, if I were to walk here to drink all the beer I want, I couldn't, it wouldn't make me fat. I bet I could do it in 4 hours. And then somebody else said, well, I could canoe faster than that from Watertown to Marblehead. And that's basically, in a nutshell, according to this article, how the Great Race was born. The first year there were supposedly 65 entrants. By 1975, when this article was published, there were over 2,000. And I'm just interested to hear if anybody would like to kick us off. Was anybody that's on the call one of the entrants? Was anybody involved in the planning of this? Did anybody participate?
Yes, good morning. This is Chris Lee.
Morning.
I'm new to the Zoom call, so I'm still not sure how to even work the camera. But I participated and was there actually in the 1976 Great Race, which was pretty close to the end of the whole process. And my oldest brother, Jay Lee, was one of the original guys at Maddie's back in the day, and there's a memorial plaque for my brother Jay Lee at Maddie's bar, behind the bar to the left on the wall. So let's see. Screen. There you go. There you go. I'm glad you got that. Somebody sent me a notice this morning by email. Sorry for the late notice. So, at any rate, that is a great shot. That is actually me on the right and my brother Greg on the left. And he and I built this custom paddle wheel canoe, especially for the 1976 bicentennial Great Race. And it was pretty fast craft. So this picture, somebody caught us actually pulling it up onto the beach in Devereux Beach at the finish line, and that was quite a year, being 76 and all. So, at any rate, that is original photo from the race, and there's quite a long history, as you all know, or many know, but because it seems to have kind of passed so long ago that maybe there's a lot that don't know. So anyway, I wanted to share that with you, and there's a lot of other stuff that certainly I can and my family was involved with early on in the Great Race.
Well, I'm so glad you sent that to us this morning that we could share it with everybody. Did you have to retrofit that canoe in any way to make it good to go from Watertown all the way to Marblehead?
Absolutely. We built that from scratch with a 10-speed, gearing, and it's all 100% custom built and engineered, because there's actually 12 paddles in that canoe, and if you dip too deep, you're not going to paddle anywhere. So you had to do the engineering to get it just right to move and so on. But in fine Great Race tradition, we left Watertown with a crew nearly at the crack of dawn. We were the fastest thing on the Charles, except for a 12-man war canoe. And they were, you know, we were really, that thing really hauled, I'll tell you. You know, if a canoe can move, that thing moved fast, you know, and easy to pedal it. So that war canoe, you know, kind of did get the best of us, but barely. But in the fine traditions of the great race, when we got to the end of the Charles River, we had calculated the portage and the nature of those paddle wheels. and if one of them broke off, we're out of the race. So in somewhat of the traditions of the race, the rules originally were that the first people that would show up as winner were disqualified. You may have gone through that. I don't know. It's one of the rules. One of the original rules was that, how do you know who wins? You know, the cheaters are going to run from Watertown. They could hop in a car, drive to Marblehead, and they're first there. The winners. Well, they cheated. So the first ones that arrived at Maddie's back in that day, the first one, they were, I think I just see my brother just joined. Is that Greg Lee? It is. That guy just jumped on as my brother Greg, the other guy in that canoe. So at any rate, so in fine tradition, yeah, he and I loaded the paddle wheel canoe on the top of an old beach wagon and carefully drove it out to the Nahant Causeway and waited for, you know, the normal canoeing crowd to show up, and then we tossed it back in Nahant and cheated our way and made the last run from Nahant to Devereaux Beach. So
we had a driver. We had a driver also.
We did. We had it was a conspiracy. There was no doubt about it. But after all the work we put into that canoe, the last thing we would not want to happen is have it not arrive on the beach at Devereaux Beach. You know, like if the paddle falls off, we're out of the race. All that work for nothing. So that was how we kind of figured our trip. So at any rate, there's one of my collaborators and the driver of the beach wagon was, I don't know if she may be around or not, but it was quite a day. And of course, in 1976, a special year in Marblehead. So anyway, I wanted to share that. And now that I see that he's on, maybe he'd like to say something.
Sure.
Well, you know, the race had become quite an event by that time because it had 2 or 3 previous races. And by the time we were racing in that particular event in 1976, the finish line at Devereaux Beach was very much like a spring break event with beer trucks, maybe at least hundreds and maybe 1,000 people there drinking beer, watching people come in on the beach. There were film crews, and it was a major event with major traffic, with all the cars, which eventually led to the demise of the great race because the people out there on Marblehead Neck were having a great deal of difficulty getting to and from their homes because of the massive traffic jams right at the beach before the causeway heading over there. So we were lucky enough to be in on probably one of the more famous races that they had, with the original races ending on State Street, where people would drag the canoes up the street and just park them outside Maddie's sail loft and just go inside and tell about why they won the race because the guy in front of them cheated, until the people that came in after you came in and said that we cheated and they were the winners, and so on down the entire list of participants in the race. It was a lot of fun.
That's great. I love those stories. I read, and I'm going to try to pull it up, that the initial what was it, finish line, as you said, was the first booth in Maddie's sail loft, right? Is that true? That the first, like, whoever got into that first booth in Maddie's was the winner. Well, and then
that sounds right.
They were disqualified.
Yeah, that sounds right. But you have to realize there were people that were running as well as on the sea. There were people that were running, riding bikes. The funniest thing was probably in the race we were in. And I think in that article on Sports Illustrated, they had a bicycle that was hooked up to at least a half dozen, maybe 8 participants in a triangle bicycle. There were such contraptions. It was just so much fun, and the kind of thing that would be hard to do this day and age. And I'm glad that you're having it as a discussion point on your Zoom meeting today.
I loved that you mentioned that it had a spring break atmosphere. Can you hear me?
Yes, sure. Yeah.
Because I didn't have a chance to dig out. I know I have a few photos. They're up in my attic somewhere. But part of the reason I didn't go to a lot of trouble to dig them out was I remember they were all faded because they're 50 years old. They're from probably the early 70s. And they were nowhere near as clear as your wonderful photo, but what you see is this impressionistic atmosphere. They were on Devereux Beach where everything ended, and there must have been fireworks or somebody must have set off something because there were all these colors. I remember everything was pink and green, and it's in the photos, you can see it. They are color, but they're very faded, not great. The, film wasn't then. And it was like a college. It was just a lot of beer, a lot of young people hanging around. And that's the main thing I remember from the late 60s and early 70s was everything was groups of young, there were just groups of young people everywhere. And this was a particularly zooey group of young people. Yeah, beer and big groups of people was my main memory of it. So.
Well, I would say it would definitely qualify as a super spreader event in today.
I was not a participant, I was a spectator. My wife and I lived in Watertown for 7 years before moving to Marblehead in 1982, but I was brought to Marblehead by a client, an architectural client, and I would drive up back and forth from Watertown to Marblehead for several years, and it must have been in 1973 or 4 when we were driving along Route 16 and almost collided with this multi-story bike structure, which had at least 8 people sitting on chase lounges bicycling, and in the back of which was a large cooler with beer. And it was quite a hazard on Route 16 in Everett. So that was my introduction that something was going on. But I have a picture from the internet that shows something similar, which looked like it may have been from the year after, which was much more embellished with the flags and other celebratory items.
I believe that was a competition of sorts. After the race started, the types of crafts, as well as what came down the street, continued to evolve, and that was a pretty interesting time. And Marblehead at that time had no problem throwing a good street party. Especially in the early days, they'd close down State Street, and basically take over Old Town, and had quite a spectacle. And as much as it was novel and incredibly fun, it got panned a lot, including when it got national press attention. And they made fun of all the so-called athletes, participating in the great race, having completely missed what it was all about. So, at any rate, let's see. I'll just get something going on my thing here. So. I think I might have lost you. Apologize for that.
Oh, we can hear you.
You can hear me? Well, my
Yep.
screen did something bizarre. So now I just got to find out how to get in and unmute myself before my dog starts barking. Let's see.
Well, while you're doing that, let me share this article that Amy found for us. An advertisement really that was put in. I just lost the date. Let's see, 1970 in the Reporter. I think you could see that. It's a call for people to help paint the paddy wagon for the great race at Blackbeard's Cove, which I think is where the Japanese restaurant is now on Pleasant Street, across from the Warwick and the Old Spirit of 76. We'll supply the paint and brushes. You supplied the ideas and talent. So I guess it wasn't even just if you were participating in the race, but you could even participate in the prep for the race. So that was kind of fun.
Sounds like.
Get you back finally. Okay. Wow.
Blackbeard's Cove. I don't know if anybody remembers
Blackbeard's Cove. Jeez. I thought I knew every bar in Marblehead. let's see, across from the Warwick Theater.
Yeah, I looked up the address. I think it's where Junji, is that how you say it? Where the Japanese restaurant is now, next to the Riptide.
Next to
Maybe-
the Riptide. Well, the Riptide's very familiar. Yeah. So,
I think it must have been short-lived because I vaguely remember the name, but I don't even remember ever being there. So it might have been a fleeting bar.
well, I think the Riptide was the local institution on, at least at that location. So, you know.
Yeah.
There were several different shops, fast food restaurants, and other food-related businesses in that building over the years. So might have to go back to the archive to try to find something about that.
Yeah, I just thought it was neat that you could like help prepare and paint the paddy wagon that was going to be driven in the Great Race. That's kind of fun.
Of course, these recollections are going back 40 or 50 years now, so I don't know. Some of them are probably a little bit less accurate, depending on one's memory ability at this stage. But it was quite a remarkable time in Marblehead because the town at that point had yet to be completely gentrified as it is today. You had a cross section of families living there from a socioeconomic perspective, and the rules and regulations could be sort of bent in those days according to the folks that were involved with the town's administration and the police department and all of that. I think people didn't quite take themselves as seriously back in 1976, and certainly part of that had to do with the town itself, the nature of the town, and the makeup of the occupants in the town. And it's a lovely town now. It's just like Rockport or maybe Laguna Beach or places like that. But it was just fun to be a part of that culture at that time.
This is Peter. Can you hear me?
Yes, Peter, good morning.
Good morning. I'm sorry my microphone may not be working that well, but is it presentable? I mean, I don't want to talk if you can't really hear me.
It's a little quiet, but I can hear you. Why don't you go ahead?
Okay. Well, I'm sorry. I just joined. I'm getting a little late, so I may be covering things that other people have covered. But I was a participant in the Great Race 3 times. The first time I walked it, and have you talked about the course of the Great Race?
Not really, no.
Okay, well, the Great Race started in Watertown on the Charles River, and it went down the Charles River till they get to the dams at the end of the Charles River by the Museum of Science. You had to portage your canoe if you were canoeing, or walk over the bridge, get into the river, or on the other side into the harbor, and then you go out the harbor, down the creek by Suffolk Downs, portage there, just northeast of Suffolk Downs, and portage from there into the River Beach area, into the ocean, paddle along the ocean till you get to the Nahant Causeway, portage in the Nahant Causeway, paddle from the Nahant Causeway to Marblehead Causeway, portage there into Marblehead Harbor, paddle down the harbor till you get to the State Street Landing Wharf, and run, bringing your canoe up to Maddie's sail loft on State Street. And so State Street was closed off, obviously, and there were about 50 canoes lying in State Street, and then you'd run to the bar and get a drink, and then obviously, the bar was overflowing, so you would carry it into the parking lot at behind Maddie's, where Crosby's is now. And it was basically a full day of drinking. I'm amazed that the people in State Street put up with it for as long as they did. People were urinating over the yards along State Street. It just was a while. It was a Marblehead Woodstock, it really was. And I'll never forget when I came out of Maddie's after a few drinks, lying in a canoe were two professional athletes, and those of you who are as old as I am will remember who they were. Jim Nance, who played for the Patriots, and Larry Siegfried, who was a basketball player for the Celtics. They were both lying in a canoe passed out, and that's probably my fondest and most vivid memory of the great race. And just as another sidelight, I don't know how many of you remember this if you were around here then, but the following year, people who were practicing for the great race, individual names, I went blank of his name, but they were paddling canoe up at Devereaux Beach, practicing for the great race. It probably means they were paddling back and forth, having a few beers. Well, anyway, they tipped over the canoe and one of them drowned. And that almost brought an end to the great race. It had nothing to do with the great race, but they were practicing for the great race. And I can't remember the fellow's name, but it was probably a Marblehead messenger those days. But it was a pretty sad thing that they drowned. One of them drowned off of Devereaux Beach. Well, anyway, this continued for a few years until the people in Stacey finally realized, and the police realized, that finishing in Stacey was not a good idea, and that's when they changed the finish line to Devereaux Beach. So that was shortened the course a little bit. You didn't report to the causeway, but things got a little wild at Devereaux Beach. But as I said, I did it 3 times, once walking and twice on bicycle, and it was probably one of my fondest and most vivid memories of Marblehead, having grown up in Marblehead. And to this day, I cannot believe that the town allowed this to happen on their property and closing on State Street and so forth. It would never happen today.
I think it's a shame. I think it's a shame that it wouldn't happen today.
Pardon me?
So I think it would be a shame that they wouldn't allow some sort of activity for community.
Right.
Especially having Devereaux Beach. You know, the town got a little stuffy, I think.
Well, there were a number of legal things going on.
Lawyers, schmoyers. My brother was a lawyer. He was in the first race with you.
Okay, yeah. Well, was he over 21?
Guy Jay Lee was right there with the rest of that gang out of Maddie's.
Okay. Well,
and I remember those guys sleeping in the canoes. I was there for that first one as well.
A lot of things illegally going on. One was underage drinking in public, urinating in public.
Yeah, made the grass grow.
Down the street, all sorts of things.
Question for those who participated. Doing some research, I came across 2 things. First, the original race was started by the 2 guys, but Robert Killer Kane was the one who was making all the money from the race for like the first 5 years. And the town said, you can't be making money on public property for no reason. And that's when the Elks Lodge apparently took over the race as a fundraiser. So I wanted to know if anybody remembers that part of it. And then second, I read somewhere that, which is somebody who just brought up underage drinking, the reason that if you came across the race first, you were disqualified was because the 4 kids from Northeastern's track team were underage and they weren't allowed in Maddie's.
Never heard the story.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, it was printed in the newspaper, so I can get you the article. And the reason was they wouldn't let him into Maddie's, and that's why the whole first across the finish was actually disqualified, because these 4 kids who were underage. So, and you remember?
It's a good story, but I think that my recollection, seeing I was there and my oldest brother was in the first race, that was part of the original rules before they ever ran that race. Because
so do you guys remember?
Because how could you decide who won? Because you know, in today's world where we hear about cheating and all kinds of other great stuff, pretty easy to cheat, hop in a car and end up at Maddie's a little early, you know. So that was the big argument between the people who were going to be paddling and running. How do we know you're not cheating? Now, in our case, I ratted this out earlier. My brother Greg was also on, and I participated in the 1976 Great Race, and we cheated like hell, but we had a good time. And we weren't looking to win the race. We were just having fun, and we had this paddle wheel canoe they showed earlier. And our fear was if we did the portage maneuver from the end of the Charles River through all of that stuff, we'd break the paddles off, and then we'd have nothing to run with. So,
you know, as far as the money was concerned,
think
And,
that all went to beer. Yeah. Actually.
well, and moving that across to the Elks, I mean, I think once again that may have had to do with liability issues, but I think that Killer Kane, if he was getting the money from this event for the first few years before they moved it into the auspices of the Elks, he wasn't getting rich, because all he was getting was the entrance money to be involved in it, which included basically getting a T-shirt that probably cost, in those days, maybe $1 or $2 to make. And I think the fee to get into the race and to participate was around, I don't know, $10 or $15. And maybe there were, in the early races, maybe 100 or maybe a couple hundred people. So he certainly wasn't getting rich, but if the town had some concerns about it, I think it was more of a liability issue. And I don't think Killer Kane and those guys, the two people that started out, wanted to be on the end of the hook for anybody that might have been injured or ran into some type of situation that could have been litigated.
Yeah, I think it was not pre-litigation time, but I think the awareness of the liability, I don't think was quite in view at that time.
Later,
but, having talked about the history of that first race and the T-shirt, which just brought this to one of my brothers who's still alive, has an original Canoers T-shirt from the first race. Now, in the first race, they had 2 T-shirts. The Canoers had a T-shirt that had cross paddles. So if you're in the canoe, your T-shirt had 2 canoe paddles crossed. And if you're a runner, it had some kind of figure or something of somebody either walking or running or something. So
I think there was
2 very distinct.
Wasn't there a rabbit?
Two T-shirts.
Wasn't there a rabbit on the T-shirt?
There might have been I don't think that was year 1. Well, I don't know. But Scott, our brother Scott, has got an original T-shirt from there. So I don't know if the museum is collecting articles, but he might be willing to donate. I mean, I don't know. It's just collecting dust in his closet somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
For like
That'd be
50
great.
years.
I've got 2 or 3 T-shirts packed away somewhere. I wanted to look for them.
Yeah, we actually don't have any.
The crossed paddles.
We don't have anything in the museum from the Great Race as far as T-shirts or if there were posters
Well,
or
I might
anything.
be able to get you a copy of that original.
Awesome.
So he just might be willing to donate.
Ooh, that would be
I kind of
exciting.
thought the town lost. I thought the town lost track of this altogether. I visited Marblehead back last year over the 4th of July weekend and Arts Festival period. And when I mentioned the Great Race, just chatting around, walking around, and I haven't been back there in decades. But at any rate, nobody knew what I was talking about. They're looking at me like I had 3 heads. What are you talking about? I'm like, the Great Race. It's Marblehead, right? The Great Race. And they're like, what? So the awareness, the local awareness for the younger people was seemed non-existent. So it was shocking. So
where I was going to ask, where is the Marblehead Museum? Because
I think they're I heard they're the Lee Mansion they're running out of or something.
No, so we own 3 properties in town. So we own the Lee Mansion. We have the Frost Gallery and exhibit space and archives across the street at 170 Washington. And then we have the Civil War Museum and the old townhouse on the 2nd floor. So we're private nonprofit. We're not part of the town. We don't get any town money. So we're all about donations and memberships. That's my plug.
So we can donate. Well, that's
absolutely.
We've got the right last name too, right? So Lee. So we're
how long
we do. And
how long has the organization been in existence?
It started in 1898 as the Historical Society and they just a name change to the museum in 2013.
Oh, so this is the organization that back in the day, I think it was Virginia Gamage was?
Yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, she was very active. Yes.
Okay. All
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
All right.
So, Peter, did you have something to add before I share something else? Or were you?
No, I had 3 T-shirts and I looked at them, looked for them just before I logged on. One I used as a paint rag. But if I find them, I will definitely donate them if they're suitable for donation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I know it. I was thinking Dan Dixie was going to be wearing this T-shirt, but I don't see it. But Dan did share a couple photos. Can I bring those up, Dan? Is that okay, what you just sent me? Or do you want to do it?
No, I'm just unmuting because the picture, this is Bill Frost and Jimmy Davenport, Marblehead's Dory people. They're in one of the pictures, and they did 5 or 6 of the races, so I don't think they wanted to say too much, but I think they can probably tell you a few stories anyway. So
Let me bring the photo up, and gentlemen, you're welcome to, if you want to share anything, please feel free.
Yeah, bring up the picture and.
Here you go.
Whoa.
There you go.
That's
great.
the 19, can you hear me with the mask on or?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Photo.
That's from the 1975 race. That is myself with the beard with no mustache on my right-hand side. My brother Chris with no shirt on in the middle, and Jimmy Davenport, or Daffy to those of you uninitiated.
I know Daffy.
First race Chris and I were in was in '73. We paddled a canoe and decided we'd never do that again. But we grew up on the harbor and we were always rowing. And we decided that the way to go would be to build a dory. So we did. And in '74, we experienced a little bit of trouble with it. And in '75, Chris and I both in training for the international dory races down to Gloucester. So we figured, because the Charles River was so windy, what we needed was somebody on a sweep oar. So we got Jimmy. He was the skinniest guy we knew. And he took us downriver, and we were having a great journey. We had 2 canoes that we were nip and tuck with. These guys really knew how to paddle. One of them had a flag on their canoe that said Rossi on it. It was a homemade flag out of a sheet, and it just had the name Rossi in black magic marker. And the other canoe we called the Hut Hut Boys, because they knew what they were doing. They didn't even talk, but one of them chanted out a cadence, and he'd say hut, and they'd all switch from one side to the other, and they went like stink. We rowed as hard as we could and could barely keep up with them until we got to Revere Beach. And when we got to Revere Beach, we bruised a few feelings because we also had a pit crew. We made a trailer for the dory that hooked up to a tandem bicycle, and we had another bike for the third guy. So we moved the boat all by ourselves. We came up the Chelsea Creek. We cut across the oil dump and came out at the lights there right by the cross for the Madonna Shrine, and rode down 16 to Revere Beach. Well, they were running like madmen with their canoe trying to stay ahead of us. So we all got to Revere Beach at exactly the same time, the 2 canoes and us, and there were 6-foot waves coming in.
Oh,
and we didn't know if we'd be able to get through them or not, but we timed it, jumped in and started rowing as hard as we could. And the canoes came in with us, and the first wave hit us, and we never saw the canoes again. The wave hit us, and we were white water up to our ears. When the wave receded, we were water right up to the gunnels. The dory was completely swamped, and there was another wave coming at us, and we knew we were done. We knew there was no getting out of it. And be damned if the wave didn't pull the bottom of the boat up. Chris was bone dry in the forward rowing position. I only had water up to my ankles, and Jimmy was underwater. His beard was going on both sides of him, and plumes, rooster tails of water just fly. It was like a gravy boat. Somebody tipped that thing up on end and dumped all the water out. And we came down the other side of the wave, we were bone dry. We rode to Nahant, cut across the causeway and got to Marblehead without seeing another boat the whole rest of the time.
All right.
Divine intervention.
So that was the first boat we built.
And I
And
surfed dry foot up on the beach too.
yeah,
That wasn't too bad.
absolutely.
Well, I think Jim has kept on that tradition with the dories. I saw a videotape not too long ago where he was taking people on a little excursion around the side of the harbor and over into the little harbor. It was very entertaining.
Billy's my crew still.
And I was the video man. I got that lucky ride.
Yeah, well, you got my summer residence in the background there, where my wife and I went for about 40 or 50 years every summer, and had a home there, which has since been torn down, and some people put up a new home there on that property, but it was right on the little cove there.
Yeah.
So it was fun. It was fun to see your video and to see it during the time of year when you'd want to be there.
Well, Jimmy and I usually make it out every Sunday morning, all summer long, all fall long too.
That's great. That's great fun. Wish I could do that down here in Florida, but things have been dicey down here along the coast of Florida.
Here's the other photo Dan sent us, just to give you a sense of the mass of people I think Susan was mentioning at the finish line at Devereaux, I guess.
Really very familiar.
1975.
1975, okay.
But that last picture that Dan showed, it was just perfect, because my impression of the whole thing is beer and hair. And that
Yeah.
personified it, beer and hair.
Here we go. Beer and
Well,
hair.
still plenty of beer.
There's plenty of beer, but not as much hair these days.
That's right.
Yeah, you go.
It's like beer and a Dunkin' Donuts cup in your hand, if I'm looking at it correctly there. Good old school Dunkin' Donuts cup.
Two of the major food groups.
That's right. And maybe even a donut in there as well.
And that has stood the test of time, I must say, as I am holding up my Dunkin' Donuts bag about 10 minutes ago.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was just before we got underway today.
Mhm.
Lauren, will you show that picture again with all the people? That's
Yes.
so reminiscent. I love that.
With the big crowd, Susan, that one?
Yeah.
Sure, give me one sec. Here we go.
Is it possible to send us copies of the pictures?
These are Dan's, so it's up to him.
Oh,
These two.
wow.
There's the finish line.
So
Yeah.
fun.
See, so yeah, the finish, I don't know if you can see my mouse. It says finish right here. So those cars are great.
Dancing on the-
Anybody who hasn't had a chance to talk want to share anything? I just want to make sure everybody has an opportunity.
Yeah, Lauren, I got a quick one. Kind of a unique experience. I participated, I'm not sure if it was 75 or 76, might even been 77, but I was with Phil Carr at the time on the canoe. We came down the Charles, and right at Children's Museum, there was this individual on the side waving us over, wanted to hitch a ride. And we says, hey, what the heck, we're just having fun, you know? And we pull over, it ended up to be Dave Maynard. He used to do community auditions and work with BZ. And we gave him a lift through Chelsea Creek, where we disembarked to, get it up by Bell Circle and take Beach Street, whatever. But I thought that was kind of unique.
Well, yeah.
Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me? This is Mike Lane calling.
Yeah.
Yes. We can hear.
Could
Yes. Well, I'm on my cell phone, so I don't know if you can hear me well or not. We live up in New Hampshire now, and back in 76, Roger Hitchcock and the bike, the Great Race, gave us 2 smoke bombs that he brought back from Vietnam. And we had them rigged on the back of the bike that when we were coming down Atlantic Avenue, we let those smoke bombs go. And you would have thought the town of Marblehead was on fire. You couldn't see anything. And I think that's what you were referring to earlier with the green and the red.
Wow.
Good to know after all these years where it came from, because, and I'll have to dig up the picture of it, because yeah, pink and red and green. I must have been, what year was that?
I believe it might have been 76 for the bicentennial.
Yeah, I was there for that, and I know Roger Hitchcock. So I don't remember the smoke bombs, but then again, you know, that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
76 ended at Devereaux Beach. We had a picture up earlier. I don't know if you saw it. My brother and I, who's on the call, showed up at the beach with a paddle wheel canoe after a long pedal from Nahant. So, you know, but
yeah, that, let me just add to that. I don't know. I may not have heard Chris talking about it in the beginning. I came out a little bit later, but we put the paddle the paddle powered canoe in the water at the start at Watertown and did pretty well with it all the way down to the Science Museum. But at the locks right there in the Science Museum, that's where we took the contraption out of the water, put it on top of a Ford station wagon with had a rooftop rack, tied it down, and drove it to Nahant on the car, and then put it in the water in Nahant.
Yeah, I did mention that, Greg, because the problem was that the contraption worked beautifully well, except that if you broke the paddles off, you were done for. So in fine Great Race tradition, we were, you know, forced to cheat to be able to make it to the finish. But it was pretty special, and you can't tell because that picture's black and white. But the paddles were actually painted red, white, blue. So you know you had two white, two red, two blue. So as those wheels went round and round, you had red, white, blue, you know, as spinning as they're coming towards you. It was pretty patriotic, really. For
you know, Chris did most of the fabrication. Did you get down to the bike shop in Marblehead for parts for that, or how did you do that? Because all I did
junkyard, I think. I don't think I'd be buying anything for that. That was all.
Yeah, I remember painting
well together. You know, so
I helped with painting the paddles and pushing the pedals. That's about all I did. Oh, I got the transportation for us.
That's right. That's right. The thing was fast. So if anybody was on, there was in that 76 canoe race from the start in Watertown, you might have seen that thing. It was a little odd when you saw it going down the river. You know,
it was very quick.
12 paddles. You know.
Well, we were young and had legs to really push that thing in those days.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Dallas Lane was a party spot back in the heyday.
Dallas Lane, that sounds familiar, vaguely familiar.
Yeah, that's interesting. Socialization back in the day. I remember when you could have your own party in the basement. In my case, with my rock and roll band, and expect 150 people. You couldn't do that these days. But that was really something in those 1970s, early 70s.
Great. Anyone else? Any other stories, thoughts, anything that springs up that you hadn't thought of in a long time?
Well, the professional athletes that ended up in those races, I've always found that entertaining. But that's because some of the folks there that were in the race knew these sports folks as friends from one way or another, or maybe through their sports agents or what have you. And we had a friend, David, who was pals with Jim Nance, the Syracuse running back who ended up on the Patriots for a while. And I think David talked him into being his muscle for the two-man canoe. And And I remember at the end of the race, I remember that Jim Nance said that was probably the only time he was going to do it after it was over. So it was quite an interesting phenomenon to see a few celebrities there during those days.
And I think they also showed up because everyone knew Maddie's. Everyone in Boston, including the athletes, at some time or another had been to Maddie's. I just remember coming downtown on a weekend evening, and the lines would be just up State Street. People from Boston would drive up on a Saturday evening waiting to get into Maddie's. I mean, everybody knew Maddie's.
It was iconic in those days. Is it still a popular dining spot?
For older people. I mean, it's not, I don't
Wait a
think-
minute. Wait a minute.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's the bar scene for young people that it was in the 60s and 70s. Am I wrong?
It has two groups that go there. The so-called older people or whatever eat upstairs.
Well, exactly.
Enjoy eating. The downstairs bar is more of a younger college kid or dating situation.
Still, really?
Good.
Am I coming through here?
Yes.
Yes.
You are. Hey, Pete, we went to school together. I'm on Leo. Dave Lord.
Oh, yes, hi.
Nice to see all these young folks around here, huh?
Yeah. Well, I remember the days when you went to Maddie's and there was sawdust on the floor, and Sniffer Gillis was a bartender, and Billy Hinch, who was a good hockey player. It was a real local hangout, and every high school kid in town couldn't wait to either come up to get their first drink in Maddie's sail off.
If you go back
to the Riptide.
Yeah, if you go back to those days, across the street from Maddie's was a coffee house that they had for a while.
Yeah, and the town was in an uproar because all those people were getting high on coffee. With the town drunk tank across the street.
Well, California across the street too, just down a couple of houses. Yeah. That's how the whole way started.
Well, I went into the service right out of high school, and I stayed there, and I followed the Great Race from Montana, from Northern Europe, from Southeast Asia, and Southwest Asia, and quite a few other places. Popped up in the international news all over the world.
No kidding.
Wow.
Yes, every place I went, somehow or another, it popped in, whether it was in Time Magazine or Newsweek or in one of these little quirk articles in a local newspaper that happened to pick it up or something like that. Oh yeah, I was in Southern California for one of them too.
He's right, because I lived in Italy in the early 70s, and yeah, he's absolutely right. It was world renowned.
Marblehead pops up all over the world.
Like
well, that's in a country in the world that doesn't know what a gerrymander is. Except that they pronounce it wrong.
That's right. So what was it about that event that galvanized sort of the human spirit across the globe? What do you think it was?
Marblehead.
Well,
we're Marbleheaders, man.
Well, you think it was the sort of the crazy?
That explains a lot, actually.
Was it the crazy fun that people were having, that people recognized everywhere? I wonder.
Yeah, could be. The spirit of men, huh?
Yeah.
Mankind, let's put it that way, huh? And
Nothing.
We'll parentheses that with WO, women.
Yeah. Well, I think in a time when, everything didn't have to be very serious,
Yeah, well, one of our classmates was on the board when they finally dumped the Great Race there, so I'm not too proud of that.
They gave in to some pressure?
Yeah. It probably was the pressure.
Oh. Oh, dear.
Well, everybody enjoyed it because it was good, clean fun. Nobody really got injured, and nobody took it all that seriously. I think the whole demeanor of Marblehead was a lot different back then.
It's a step up from a fireman's muster, huh?
Yeah. Is there anything
Just
like
a little step up from a muster.
Is there
Yeah.
anything like is there anything like this going on other than like, you know, you know, like the Topsfield Fair? Or, I mean, I guess it's probably close. Is there anything that's kind of fun and recognizable that's still going on? That's just for fun?
Yeah, motorcycle racing is Sturgis.
I understand we're still having musters. I'm down in Florida, so I don't see them. So, but I pick it up a lot up on the Marblehead News on the Facebook and whatever. And we pretty frequently get pictures in from somebody doing practice runs over at Red's Pond, both the Gary and the Okos.
Yeah. And they're probably sailing boats there too, I bet.
Yeah, there was another ex-classmate of ours that was involved in that, I think, Biff Martin.
With model boats on Red's Pond, it was always fun on a Sunday to see the folks out there.
We've got pictures of that popping up on Facebook there from way back in the 1800s.
Oh boy!
This is going way back.
No kidding.
Is it Dan Dixie that puts those old ones out? Those old pictures of Marblehead, and Three Cod Tavern now publishes a lot of the pictures from back in the 1800s on their daily advertisements there. So pretty amazing.
I remember Three Cod Tavern when it was called Dill's in Marblehead.
Well, Three Cod Tavern was someplace else actually. That was down at the wharf, and went out of business at 2 or 3 different places, didn't it? And
I'm not sure.
Took over what we know as Dill's next to the newspaper delivery section there.
Yeah, Three Cod Tavern is definitely where Dill's was.
And
but
right next
before it was Dill's, that was down on the down where the landing is.
Oh, okay.
And that was also after my time in town. You guys should know that better than me.
And next to Dill's in those days was Hutchie's Potato Chips.
Yeah, well, there's North Shore News where all the paper boys worked out of.
Yeah, they made
and then there was the submarine base there for a while, also next to Hutchie's.
That's right. Yep, that was a very busy part of town, and I washed dishes in Dill's for I think one summer, so I was familiar with Dill Broke. Yeah, but you could get a twin lobster dinner there on a weekend night for like about $5.99 or something like that. So it was a pretty good spot.
And lobster pie was the best thing I ever tasted.
Oh, that's right. They did that too.
Lobster pie. I still remember it.
I remember Kenny in the back making that lobster pie, and during the week he was working on the dump truck. Interesting.
Did he wash his hands in between?
Yeah, in the dishwater. Yeah, I remember that. Oh boy, those were the days. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, I tell you.
I think I got you guys off subject a little while, a bit there. I apologize for that there. Hey, Pete, good seeing you. So, shame we didn't have a reunion this year, but we moved it up a year. We're going for our 61st reunion.
Right, yeah. At Dick Cates' house, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Back to the great race, there was one injury, the parachuter that came in to land on the beach.
That's right.
He broke his ankle. Yeah, he landed about 30 feet from where I was standing. You could actually feel the thud in the ground when he hit.
Ouch.
When was that? Do you remember about what year that was?
That was 75.
75.
I actually woke up in my apartment on State Street later on that day with the ex he was aiming for over me a couple and put me to bed and put that on top of me.
Oh no.
Well, by the way, thank you for putting this this sort of group on together today. It's the first time I just downloaded Zoom this morning when a friend of mine told me this was going to be going on, and so I haven't been able to operate the Zoom too well, but it's certainly been fun listening to everybody and recall the days back then around the great race and the town. And thanks for putting it on.
Yeah, absolutely. Every month, the first Saturday, usually it's the first Saturday of the month at 10 a.m., we do a Marblehead Memories meeting. And we'll do a different theme. I have to look up what next month's theme is. I think it's nicknames, actually. I want to hear all about these nicknames that people used to have and what all
The
that
ones
is
that
about.
you mean the ones that are repeatable?
Well, yeah, maybe we won't put it on Facebook if they're going to be some that aren't repeatable.
Well, nicknames they got pretty funny sometimes. Some of them. So
Let
you're
me
right.
look it up. Let me look it up because we're at 11 o'clock, so we usually wrap up around 11 unless anybody has some last thoughts.
Yeah, you're talking about subjects. One thing I'd be very interested in, I don't know how many others would be, history on Black Joe's Pond. That used to be a frog patty there. At some point in time, that was dug out and filled up with sand for a ice factory. That's where our ice used to come from before refrigeration. And I haven't seen too much documentation of when, where, how that came together or whatever. Also, we although that Red's Pond used to be a quarry, that's about all I ever heard about it. It was a quarry. Where did that stone go to? Why was it important?
Okay, that's good. Yeah, we could do the ponds.
There were a couple of building blocks in the history of our town and our Marblehead culture.
Awesome.
Two locations that had a lot of history that might be of interest. One would be the bench. I don't know if you've ever heard of it.
Yeah, I've got a picture of it.
Yeah.
I've got a picture of it. I wonder if I could.
Is it still there? Is the bench still there?
It's still there.
Okay, my dad used to work in Shepherd's drugstore across the street.
Yes. Okay.
Okay, so we're talking about the same bench, right?
That's the one.
Okay. He's got a picture of 3 people that were on that bench 12 hours a day, every day for their entire life, I think.
Yeah,
Jim, you were one of
them.
them.
A cartoon of it. I've still got that cartoon someplace.
I can't picture that bench without seeing Jim sitting on it. Daffy sitting on it.
Yes.
He should put a statue of him on that
50, 60 years before Jim Daffy was a twinkle in somebody's eye.
The other location is the lighthouse in Marblehead. That park up there.
Right.
And I think if you had that as a topic of discussion and people knew it was coming up, the different experiences people can remember and things they saw from the lighthouse. And I know, is my brother still on there?
Yeah, Chris, still here.
Didn't you climb that one time?
Oh yeah, all the way to the rails and up. Yep.
All the way to the top.
We used to play tag on that lighthouse, running from layer to layer. We're just nuts, absolutely insane.
Climbing freestyle the outside of the lighthouse to the top.
Playing tag, chasing each other up and down the lighthouse. Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah, and I took a guitar amplifier and a trumpet, and hooked it into the, plugged it into the restroom outlet there, and put it on a rock and played Reveille down the harbor at like 4 in the morning one time.
There you go. I survived the climb. Yeah. Yeah.
So
very similar.
Other than the exploits that some crazy folks did like us, but I'm sure there are a lot of people who there were wedding proposals out there. I mean, people would have recollections of visits to that lighthouse and things they saw and actions that took place. It might be interesting.
Definitely. All great ideas. So we'll add them to the list.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Put our own lock on it for the summer.
Got another lighthouse there. What's that?
What's that?
175 steps to the top.
Nice.
That's cool. Look at that.
That's the Marblehead one?
No, it's Pompano Beach. They've got a historical society that runs it down here. We get some historical things in Marblehead that the lighthouse kind of got forgotten about. If we didn't have Fort Stool across the harbor, I mean, the lighthouse would be a lot more important than what it is culturally, I think.
144 steps to get up to the top of the lighthouse in Marblehead.
We got a short one.
144.
144.
Hey, do you hear much about Marblehead, Ohio these days? Isn't there a Marblehead, Ohio somewhere?
There sure is. If you Google Marblehead, you'll get Marblehead, Ohio.
Yeah, where the hell is it? Oh, it's Ohio.
Ohio.
It's a small little. It's sort of like Clifton to a town called Sandusky, and it's in the, I guess I'd call it the southwest corner of Lake Erie.
Oh, that's good geography there. I like that.
I think that's my recollection, anyways.
Well done.
All right, everybody, we've hit about 11 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and wrap up. The video will be on YouTube early next week. It'll be on Facebook as soon as we wrap up. Please join us again. You can always get the Zoom link. You can register via our website, marbleheadmuseum.org. Go to upcoming programs. You can register that way and get the Zoom link day of that way as well. And I appreciate everybody taking the time on a Saturday morning to share all your stories with us. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't forget to donate.
Thanks,
That's right.
And don't forget to donate. That's true. Marbleheadmuseum.org. You can donate online.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.